Hi, I'm Will from Tested.
And I'm Norm from Tested.
Norm, it's tablet season.
A lot of products coming out this holiday season. People are buying laptops, tablets. It really is weird that just before the biggest shopping weekend of the year is when all the new tablets...
You're suggesting this has to do with the upcoming holiday season. New iPads, new Surfaces, new Kindles, new Kindle Fires. Everything's happening.
And even Nexi.
Exactly.
What I have in front of me is the new Surface, as you alluded to. It's the Surface 2 from Microsoft. Give people a quick recap of what the Surface is. Last year, along with the launch of Windows 8, Microsoft released two products, the Surface RT and then also a Surface Pro.
There was a little bit of a lag, though. The Surface RT came out first, and then a few months later, the Surface Pro came out. The RT is ARM-powered, or ARM-based, rather, so it runs a different version of Windows than is on the Pro. The Pro is a real laptop computer that runs x86 Windows. Any application that you put on any Windows PC you ever owned will run on the Surface Pro. The RT was a completely different story, though. I spent time with it last year and was disappointed is being pretty kind in the experience I had with the
I don't think you're the only
RT.
one that was disappointed with the RT. And like you said, the Pro is a real computer. This is, even though they're both called Surface, they're two very different classes of computers. This Pro is basically an ultrabook. Last year's Pro had Ivy Bridge processor. There's even a digitizer. It's a touchscreen. And Microsoft's very unique model for their tablet computers was that it would have a kickstand. So the Pro last year, along with RT, had a kickstand, which allowed it to be used both as a tablet, but also on your desk, both these tablets are to view media.
That's exactly it. And then you paired it with a keyboard accessory. They had a couple of different keyboard accessories. Neither of them were particularly good.
Right. So this keyboard accessory is from last year, and it was the touch cover. So the idea is that this was a Surface RT. You snap on the touch cover, and it works as a cover.
You're instantly more productive, Norm.
And then this has a capacitive sensor to detect your keyboard typing. None of the covers were included. They were both accessories to the buy separately. $100 for a touch cover, $130 for the type cover, which has physical keys. This year, new versions of both of those as well.
But the knock against both the Surface Pro and the Surface RT last year was that you couldn't use. They weren't really laptops. You couldn't put them on your lap. They were difficult to type with because all of the guts of the computer and the top screen part. It was really top heavy and unwieldy, and the angle of the kickstand was not right for typing on your lap unless you happen to be really, really tiny person.
There were three big problems with the Surface RT last year, as everyone who tested it, including you, talked about. The first thing was, it's like you mentioned, it's lapability. It's the ability to be productive with this kickstand and touch or type cover on the lap. We'll talk about it in just a second. The second big problem with the Surface RT was the lack of apps. The Windows Store did not have the vast majority of the apps people thought were essential to the tablet experience. Banking app, music playing app.
Not even that. You couldn't get, the only browser that was accessible, that was available was Internet Explorer.
So that being one of the most important apps on any tablet, the web browser being limited to just one, the built-in IE10 at that time, was a problem for a lot of people. The third real big problem with Surface RT was its processing speed. It ran on a Tegra 3, which is an ARM processor made by NVIDIA, and it was very slow. The apps weren't optimized for it, and so you would spend a lot of times looking at these load screens. You'd tap the Surface and be on that flipping load screen for 5-10 seconds and then get the app.
And then I would add a fourth thing. Windows 8 was relatively new at the time. It wasn't particularly good. The RT version shipped with preview versions of Office, so basically the only apps you had at launch were Office, Internet Explorer, a kind of stripped down version of Office, Internet Explorer, and then some really sketchy stuff from the Microsoft Store.
So let's talk about Surface 2, since that's what today is about, and Surface 2, and talk about everything that we were worried about for Surface 1 that we thought sucked about the Surface RT, and see how they address those.
Hold on, is this going to be one of those videos where we end up and you say all of my complaints from the Surface RT are fixed in the Surface 2?
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
Let's start with the apps.
Okay.
The app selection is still very limited.
They have things like Facebook now.
There's Facebook, there's official Facebook app, there's official Twitter app. It's over 100,000 apps in there, but I mean, people who've done some deep diving, there are a significant number of those apps are garbage apps that you would never use.
There's a lot of, if you go into the most recently uploaded list, which I think they removed from Windows 8.1, in the Windows 8 days, you would actually see things like 25 different travel guides in different languages for the same city in Germany being uploaded because they were paying developers per app they uploaded a kind of bounty. So there's a lot of weird stuff like that.
I'm in the store
happening
right now, and let's do a quick test. Let's just look at their essential apps and what they think are probably their best apps. So you just have things like Netflix, that was there last year, Twitter, Amazon, Hulu Plus. It looks like on its face, these are kind of things that I would want.
You can get Kindle, so you can see your Kindle books. I mean, a lot of that stuff makes sense. What about Pandora?
Pandora? I can just type here. Pandora? Nope. No Pandora. What about things like, I use Citybake?
Oh, yeah. But you can just use that in the web browser, right?
Yes. No. What about something like Instagram?
I saw an Instagram icon on that homepage.
I saw an Instagram icon on that homepage as well. You know what it is? It's Instagram Explorer.
Ooh.
Or Instagram Explorer Plus. It's just people tap into the API.
And then, there's another Instagram on the bottom. That's surely got to be it because it has the real name in it.
Nope. That's Instagram Forever.
What's Milligram? Is that about weights and measures?
Not really at all.
This is kind of disappointing. Well, Microsoft has Xbox, and Windows Phone 8 had pretty good games. Are there games here?
There's Halo.
Oh, that Halo 2-stick shooter?
There's Halo, a Spartan Assault Lite, and a full version.
I played the Lite version on my home PC.
There you go. There are some light games. The app selection, Microsoft's excuse is that you can find stuff on the websites using a web browser. But like you said, only one web browser. And that sole web browser is the only thing available now as well.
So Google, Firefox, Mozilla, Opera, the other browser manufacturers haven't come out and said, hey, we believe in Windows 8.1 RT. We're going to release browsers.
Microsoft is not allowed.
They're not allowing them?
Yeah.
Okay.
No one has created any. It's just like on iOS. iOS, if you use iOS web browser, you have to use the iOS rendering engine.
But the difference is that Apple can get away with that because their browser is actually pretty good. I mean, how do you feel what IE10 is? I haven't used it enough to say. Oh, sorry, IE11, whatever.
I think, well, on Surface RT, there's actually two versions of IE11.
Desktop and
there's desktop and the modern version.
So that's the way it worked last year. I found that 10 was a little bit of a disappointment, challenge to use. Stuff rendered poorly. You've got a lot of square edges where there's supposed to be curves on other browsers.
No
stuff
problem.
Like that.
That is not here.
Okay.
All the web pages I've seen in the Metro version render as I would expect them to render on the desktop.
So when you go, fire up IE, rolls in.
This is IE11.
This is tested. See, our square corners, I guess they aren't round anymore. So that's right. Okay, perfect.
Yeah, everything's fine.
Okay.
I mean, all the websites I normally use look exactly as I expect.
They work right. You can use comment fields.
Yep.
HTML5 video plays.
Flash plays even.
Okay.
Yep. And then the real special thing about Surface RT is the desktop. We'll get to that in just a second. So app selection, still not great. Web browser, much improved, but still not an excuse to not have an app version of those dedicated services.
So one of the other things that kind of irritated me with the RT machine last year is that the touch experience on desktop apps is really bad.
We're not at desktop yet.
Okay.
I'm still talking about at Metro. So performance-wise, also much improved.
Okay.
So inside here is a Tegra 4 instead of a Tegra 3.
Okay.
It's a quad-core processor running at 1.7 gigahertz as opposed to 1.3 gigahertz last year. Very noticeable. I don't have the Surface 1 booted up right now, but for something like I don't actually have Facebook launched right now. Do I? And you can see from here. Nope. These are the apps I have kind of queued up.
I can't say. I'm going to take your word for it.
This is how long it takes to launch Facebook.
Oh, that sucks. That was
fine.
I mean, the question is that Facebook's fault or is that Microsoft's fault? So, try something else. How about is Netflix loaded? Is Netflix
is not loaded.
That takes a long time to load on. Yeah, that's a pretty. I mean, just to get to the part where it's going to the internet and saying, "Hey, you should." Yeah, that's a pretty long time to get to a login screen. I mean, I don't feel like that performance on my desktop machine with a hexa-core x86 CPU is particularly good either. So maybe it's a Windows problem and not a Surface 2 problem.
It could be that. There's still 2 gigs of RAM here. It's on a 64-bit wide memory bus, which actually is supposed to help with the app loading. I think it's much better than the Surface RT.
But is it good enough?
It's good enough because I'm using mostly desktop apps.
Okay.
Yes. So the Metro apps, if they're preloaded, for example, Twitter is loaded. And if I hit it, it should be up. I mean, once it's loaded, it's no problem. So it just depends on how much memory you're using.
And how long will they stay loaded? How many apps can you
leave
open before it drops out?
And the way I use this, Depends on how many tabs you open and have open in Internet Explorer.
So presumably you have things like Word, Internet Explorer, Outlook, Desktop Internet Explorer, and 2 other things. And then it starts cycling. I think last year we got to 7 apps maybe before it started shutting down.
It really depends on how you use it.
Okay.
And there are 2 main ways you can use this computer. You can use it like a laptop, which is how Microsoft wants you to be able to use this, a $450 laptop, or you can use it as a tablet. Let's talk about both those things. I have it set up right now.
I have one more question about IE before we go on.
Sure.
When you use stuff like Google Docs and kind of JavaScript-heavy web pages, do you find the performance in there okay on this or not so much?
As we'll see, performance is okay depending on how many other tabs you have open.
Okay.
So laptop or tablet.
Yeah.
This is in kind of the laptop pose. I'm just going to borrow Lenovo's branding and call it the pose. And so I have a type cover. This type cover 2 attached. And
Okay.
It's magnetically attaches. It's pretty strong.
Makes a satisfying clicking noise.
I have a mouse plugged in. It's one USB 3.0 port now.
Okay. Is the touch area on this better? They've used the touch area from what was on the touch covers before to replace the trackpad.
Oh, this touch?
Yes.
This is terrible.
Yeah, it was unusable last year. Still really bad.
It's still really bad, and also there's no longer clicks.
Yeah. So now it's just actually a capacitive surface there.
And I actually miss having this click.
Yeah. Does it still only have one USB port?
One USB port, USB 3 now.
That's something.
And then there's a kickstand. The biggest change in Surface 2 this year is that the kickstand goes now in 2 places. It can lock from
So that's last year's angle.
Last year was actually 22 degrees, slightly less.
So it was even worse.
And this is 24,
Okay.
which I never use. I think this is unusable. Even like at a desk, I think I'm still...
What if the desk was really, really high?
Really high? Maybe.
Okay.
But this is a normal desk. I'm sitting here, and it is more comfortable to look at it at the 40
You're still
degree
looking
angle.
down like you would with a laptop, but at least that's the angle I normally keep my laptop
This
at.
is the full extension on a normal laptop. 40 degrees, and this works as a laptop. So,
do you ever use it without the type cover on?
no.
It's always you always have the cover on.
When I have a laptop on?
Just in general, have you ever used it without the cover?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's when I use it as a tablet.
Okay.
So I load this up. I think of it as a laptop, and I want to go to a desktop. And the thing about Windows RT is that there is a desktop. And like I said earlier, there is 2 versions of IE11. We showed IE11 in the modern UI, and this is IE11 in the desktop. And what you'll notice is that icons look really small here, and that's because I have it set to 100% DPI. That's
Is
because
this the default
Surface 2,
setting, or did you change it?
I changed it. The default setting is 150%. But I wanted to show that there is a new resolution screen here, and that Surface 1 had a 1366 by 7068 resolution screen. Now we're at 1920 by 1080.
Which is the same as the Surface Pro.
Same as the first Surface Pro.
Okay.
But unlike the Surface Pro, where I want to run at 100% DPI and legacy apps don't work, here we don't have that problem because there are no legacy apps.
Right.
All you're running is Internet Explorer, something like Notepad, your Windows Explorer.
Your Office stuff is still...
And Office.
Yeah.
But what you get, for people who don't know what Windows RT is this faux desktop. Is traditional Windows desktop, and that means actual Windows. So you have Internet Explorer, which I have here, and I have about 4 tabs open.
The window redraw is still a little noticeably slow.
And I think this is the memory stuff working right now.
Okay.
So I'm loading stuff up. It's loading. I have 3 tabs here, with including Gmail and also Google Docs, and it's red, meaning that it's not loaded, and now it's loaded.
So this isn't something you're going to do your normal leave 40 tabs open all the time.
12 tabs is my maximum.
Okay.
And 12
is
tabs.
That imposed by you, or is that by the
No,
OS?
that's from my testing. And the way I normally work is I have all my Google Docs in one window. For example, I have my Gmail and Google services in one, and then I have my web browsing in another.
Okay.
And once 12 tabs open, then you start having to reload a bunch of tabs.
Got it.
And this isn't without any of the Metro apps kind of open. So I had a Twitter open earlier, and I can load that up. And what I do is I put Twitter on the side here.
So you actually are using the docking. With the higher resolution, it makes more sense.
Makes a lot more sense because I'm seeing a lot of text here. For example, if I go to a site like, let's go to like Ars Technica, you're getting the full width basically.
What if you? How about? Okay, so my complaint with the desktop stuff last year, and in Windows 8 with a touch device, frankly, is that it's difficult to use the touch like you have to use a mouse or a trackpad with the desktop because the touch targets are too small. The on-screen keyboard for desktop apps is really, really bad.
You're not. I would say if you don't have a keyboard and if you don't have any keyboard plugged in or any mouse plugged in, there's no reason you should be in the desktop at all.
Okay. What if you want to use Word? There's no Metro version of Word.
Right. If you want to use Word, you'd have a keyboard plugged in.
Okay.
I wouldn't recommend using Word with just the type
Avoid the desktop if you're in tablet
if
mode.
you're in your mental tablet mode,
you
shouldn't be in this desktop mode at all.
Okay.
But if you have a mouse plugged in, that's fine. And like I said, 12 tabs open. I'm fully productive with in the desktop mode with multiple windows. And this is something I wish other tablet hybrids had. Like I can't do this on the iPad. I can't do this on Android, and I definitely can't do this on a Chromebook.
Yeah, I'm not completely convinced of the value of doing this. I like it. When the keyboard and mouse are attached, I definitely understand the value. The laptop metaphor makes a ton of sense.
Yes.
I would much rather spend $400 on a bad x86 laptop, I think, than get an ARM-based thing.
Well, and there are $400 laptops and tablet hybrids that are $450 ones that actually run Windows Pro that aren't crippled.
Right.
And we'll talk about that in a little second. But you have your apps like Notepad, and I find Notepad to be a perfectly serviceable note taker. If I was taking this on an airplane and I just want to type, I actually wouldn't even use Microsoft Word, even though Word loads just fine, Word RT, but I think Word is a little bit of a memory hog.
Is that the terms of service for Word?
No, this is a document I'm actually loading up.
I mean,
I would just type in Notepad.
But on the other hand, it would be nice to be able to use a stripped-down text editor like Notational Velocity that has all the stuff that comes with that, like syntax highlighting and syncing and all that stuff.
That's not
you can't install that.
You can't install any x86 programs in Windows RT. This is running at 100% DPI settings, but you can of course change that. 150 actually works really well. And I can show you how to change that right here. Scale level right there.
Do you have to log in and log out still?
I believe you do, and I'm just going to do that right now and show you how simple that is, because you also have that the password.
The picture password. Your voice is your passport.
So, for example, now you know my password is nope. Oh, there it goes.
Good responsiveness there.
And back at the desktop, now all the icons are bigger, and I actually like using about 125%.
So one of the stories from Microsoft that we've heard about the original Surface devices is that the Surface Pro has become a content creator's favorite. Gabe from Penny Arcade, a lot of photo editors, stuff like that. I know you take a ton of photos, Norm. What's your photo editing process with this Surface 2?
There is no photo editing capability here.
And you can't buy apps that'll enable that?
There's Photoshop Express, which lets you crop and do some light tuning.
Really?
But like, if you are someone who takes photos and wants to use something like Lightroom, you're not going to be able to do that on a Surface 2.
Okay.
You would have to wait for the Surface Pro 2. This is probably the best image editor I could find on the modern UI.
Is this Photoshop Express?
And this is Photoshop Express, and I can do things like crop, and do some white balance and add some filters, rotate. But it's so slow compared to using Photoshop or even Paint is on here, but it's so slow as opposed to using a real photo editing app.
Tool on a real computer.
A real tool.
Okay.
So image editing is something you absolutely cannot do. Typing, you can do. Web browsing, you can do. If you're thinking about this as a cheap laptop alternative.
Okay.
So let's talk about this as a tablet. For that, I'm going to disconnect this type cover and
throw that thing away.
The type cover is one I would recommend.
Did you try you didn't test the touch cover?
I don't have a touch cover, but
difficult to recommend.
But I still recommend. I would recommend this. Type cover 2 over type cover 1. Like you said earlier, this capacitive touchpad now. It used to be clicky here. This is no longer clicky. This is backlit now.
Just to be clear, it was physically clicky, but that physical clicks on that old one didn't always represent a click to the computer. So, I mean, the type cover previously was almost unusable unless you were on a real rigid surface. I did notice when we got the demos of these a few weeks ago that both the new type and touch covers are much less flexible than the old ones.
Same, exactly the same.
Hand me the old one. I want to see.
Oh, you're breaking it?
I'm not going to break it. Just feel it, stiffer. Now feel that one. It makes flimsy noises.
It's not a big deal.
Could you use it on your lap?
So we'll talk about lapability.
Okay.
That's the one thing I skip. I'm gonna see if I can get this on camera on my lap.
This is a recreation of your home life, I assume.
No, home life goes straight in my lap. I don't know if I'll be able to do this on camera. It is Type 1 lap.
Okay.
And the reason is that it has this new 40-degree angle. So what happened with the weight distribution is when you have it at, I can show you here on sideways, yes. When you have it at 24 degrees, and your lap is this surface here, your weight, your center
the center of gravity for it is somewhere back here,
here, and also the weight distribution is higher up here.
Right.
When you're leaning further back here,
well, it comes back out to right here. Guess, yeah.
And so the weight isn't being pushed on this hinge area here. And so when you're typing, it's not bouncing back and forth.
The other thing I noticed is that it isn't as floppy. The keyboard in general doesn't flap around as much, which means that your presses can be less distinct and still impact
you can type
reliably.
And they reduce the travel
Yeah.
on this, which didn't affect my ability to type at all.
I propped up on my knees on a high boy chair and was able to type a couple of paragraphs without missing anything. So I feel like that's much better.
The only disadvantage to having this new angle here is that the kickstand goes further back a couple inches, and that means that you can't, if the edge of my knee is here, you can't push it past the edge of the knee because then it falls over. And so you just have less space. It takes more.
So you're going to be crunched up in closer with your hands closer to your stomach.
So if you have short thighs, then this is going to take up all of your thighs.
So Peter Dinklage should not buy a Surface.
I can't recommend. I wouldn't recommend him buy any of these.
Very good.
As a tablet, so disconnect this. Same weight as last year's, 1.5 pounds.
Okay.
Same thickness, about a little thinner, 9 millimeters as opposed to 9.4. Indistinguishable.
I like the gray color.
It's gray in the back and it says Surface as opposed to Microsoft.
I don't have a strong feeling either way on that.
I still think that this is a good two-handed device in landscape.
Okay.
One hand, would not recommend. Would never recommend this portrait position.
I read books in the portrait position.
This
it's still too long.
Comical.
You feel silly.
This is comical. Yes, like this isn't a strain right now, but doing this for an hour is a strain.
Well, who reads the books? It's in your lap. Tilt it up.
Comical.
Anyway. Comics like that? Did you read? Is there a comic reader for this? Can you get Comixology for Windows 8?
You can. I don't think you can get Comixology. You can get Kindle though.
Okay.
This is the preferred way to read, and to browse the web even.
So then you get two pages of the book, like a real paper book.
Yes. So with the Kindle, I would not recommend one page. You have to get the 2 pages.
Okay.
And I think this is totally serviceable.
What's the brightness and dimness on the screen like? This
is actually pretty low.
Does it go dim?
It goes. Yeah.
Yeah, it gets dark. I mean,
that's actually the lowest.
That's nighttime. That's late.
I think it's really bright. Like I had problems with the Lenovo Yoga, and now how it didn't get bright enough, and this goes much brighter.
Can you use this outside in sunlight?
Yes.
Okay.
You can. The screen is great. The IPS screen, I think, is really, really good.
The first thing I noticed about it is it's a noticeably better screen than last year's.
And like, I didn't test the color gamut stuff. Microsoft is better. Everyone else who's actually done that testing says that the color accuracy is really good.
And it looks like it's nice contrast too.
But it's good contrast. But because you can't really image edit, photo viewing, difference between 90%, 95% accuracy is negligible.
If you're looking at photos on Facebook, the compression is going to be worse, bad enough that the screen won't.
I'm a little disappointed that they didn't make it lighter. Or thinner.
It's a pound and a half, right?
A pound and a half. So this is about the size, the thickness and the weight of an iPad 3 or 4. The 3 or 4 is a little bit lighter, but they're about the same thickness at 9 millimeters. But of course, you have something like the iPad Air out now. So if someone's going to go into a store and have no, ecosystem investment and just looking for something that's going to be thin and light.
Hey Norm, I want to buy a tablet.
Yeah.
What should I buy? The thin and light one or this great big heavy thing?
Well, with the great big heavy thing, you could type and use it kind of like a laptop. But no, you want to buy a tablet, and if you're looking to buy a tablet, this is not the thing to get.
So I'm gonna go ahead and say the kickstand is really compelling. I spent the last couple of weeks testing the Kindle Fire HDX, the 7-inch one. I love watching videos on that thing, but having a kickstand on it would be a significant improvement.
Kickstand is great because on the table, you can do all sorts of stuff. You can have a phone or
put this on your kitchen table when you have a recipe out. It's much better than leaving it flat and having
the concept of the kickstand
all over it.
is real great. And I'm going to demonstrate. Imagine that I have my feet on.
This is an imaginary couch.
I'm sitting on a couch and I have my feet on a coffee table.
Okay.
And on the full 40-degree extension, it fits perfectly over my lap.
And you're just resting it on your knees.
And it's just on my knees. And it's just this is how I browse the Surface.
So you're on the internet, I'm watching TV, talking to people.
I got IMDb.
Okay.
And then I'm texting on my phone.
This is an unhealthy level of connectedness.
And I'm totally comfortable.
You don't look very comfortable right now, but I can imagine if there's an imaginary coffee table under there,
feet
and your knees weren't digging
table.
into the hard edge of our IKEA tables here, I can see how it might be comfortable.
Battery life, there's a 31 watt-hour battery in here, and that goes for about 6.5 hours. But
that's pretty poor for a 10-inch tablet.
That's because in desktop with relatively heavy use.
Okay.
If you're just watching a video, 8 hours.
It's still pretty poor for a 10-inch tablet. So here's a question. Is this the best at anything? Is there a reason to buy this device?
It's a loaded question because you have to consider the price point and the alternatives.
Yeah, I can buy all sorts of $250 laptops.
Like, for example, I wouldn't say that a MacBook Air is the best at anything.
No.
Except that my desktop is much faster.
It's the best 3-pound machine that runs OS 10.
So this is the best $450 device that you can be productive on and also have a touchscend and use as a tablet.
So compare this to a $250 Chromebook, which is essentially the same thing.
Sure.
We're looking at a browser and then a kind of crappy app ecosystem and a permanently attached keyboard, no touchscreen. Does touch add anything here?
Absolutely.
Really?
Yes. I would spend the extra $170 for this over a Chromebook if those were my only two options.
Okay.
For the touch alone.
Okay, so then here's the other one. Okay. I have a $300 Windows laptop. Because remember, we got to price in the keyboard on this, which is another $100. Yeah. Putting it at $550. Am I better off buying a $550 Surface 2 Plus keyboard or any laptop that runs Windows and is x86?
There's one laptop that Asus makes, Transformer T100, which has Bay Trail, which is Intel's their new Atom processor, and that's an x86 processor which runs Windows Pro. You can install whatever desktop app you want on, and it has Metro and it has touchscreen. That, which we haven't tested, I think is better than the Surface 2.
Okay, like on paper, it looks better for sure.
On paper,
I don't understand why anyone would cripple their Windows experience. Like, the reason you buy a Windows machine is because you can run this incredible ecosystem of software on it, and by limiting yourself to the stuff that's available in the App Store, and even a subset of that, because there's some stuff in the App Store that won't run on this. It seems like I just don't understand it, especially at $550.
The tablet experience is what hurts us the most. If the number of apps, and I think the speed is totally fine, if the number of apps and the quality of apps on that Metro side was sufficient enough to replace everything that I do on, maybe it's like 90% of the stuff I do on iOS tablet, on iPad, then having that additional desktop and having that ability to multitask and file manage.
But use this as a real computer in a pinch,
Use it as kind of. Like on an airplane ride, actually be able to have 2 windows open using the internet airplane Wi-Fi.
But I mean, you have a laptop that does that.
Well, this is also $450.
Okay, but if it had amazing battery life or something, I could kind of get behind it. I just don't. I fundamentally don't understand why you would buy this instead of pretty much anything else, including a Chromebook, which I can't believe I'm saying people should be buying Chromebooks.
You shouldn't be buying Chromebooks. You should not be buying Chromebooks. But on the low end side, it's a Chromebook, $250 to $270 for the HP Chromebook. On the high end side, it's an Ultrabook. If cost is your worry, then a lot of people are going to skew toward the Chromebook, and all you need is a web browser. If performance is your worry, then a lot of people are going to buy that Ultrabook, spend $700, $800 on an Ultrabook. This sits right in the middle. So.
Yeah, or you could buy a Nexus Fire, a Nexus 7, or a Kindle Fire HDX, and buy a cheap laptop to go with it, and get 2 things that are better than this weird hybrid thing.
I don't think necessarily having 2 things is better than
that's probably not
having one.
Frequently not true, but okay.
If my option was to I'm flying to New York. I have 5 hours. I need to type something. And the option was to take this or something that was heavier and more expensive. And company was only going to issue one. I would take this.
Okay.
It's very, very specific.
It's a pretty specific set of circumstances.
Yes. There's also a better camera in here, which I don't think really matters.
The one that's facing towards you, used for video conferencing?
Yes, there's a 3.5 megapixel camera on the front, 5 megapixel camera on the back.
Okay.
The low light on the front camera, I think, is actually pretty good for Skype calls. And if you buy this, you get a year of Skype to free calls to landlines and phone numbers and Skype hotspot, and also 2 years of 200 gigabyte storage on SkyDrive.
One more question. Sometimes people have asked me what Windows 8 and 8.1 are like if you don't hook your Windows account to it. Have you tried that at all?
You have to hook your Windows account to this.
So you basically can make a local account that's a dummy account, but there's going to be nothing there, and a lot of stuff's not going to work.
Like, for example, SkyDrive tied to your Windows account. You can't take advantage of the SkyDrive, which I think is important to the Windows experience, especially the Surface experience, because you get that 200 gigs. You can't use that unless you tie it to a Windows account.
Okay.
There's extra storage here on this.
It has a micro SD slot. Yeah.
Goes up to 64 gigs.
Okay.
I have a 32 gig in here, which I also think is necessary.
I think it goes more than 64 gigs. There's not larger than 64 gig micro SD cards available yet.
Sure.
So yeah.
And 32 gig model, if you turn it on, you get 20 gigs usable. 64 gig model, I'm not sure. I don't have that.
Better than last year, I guess. Is there? I don't think there is a 64 gig model of the Surface 2. Is there? Oh, okay. So that's the Surface 2.
That's the Surface 2. It's going to be really great for a very specific number of people, probably Microsoft employees.
Okay, and maybe students that are related to Microsoft employees.
Students, like Panos Panay told us, students is the number one demographic they want to get this in the hands of.
I can't imagine students are going to not be able to edit photos and stuff like that. There's big holes here that people who are using this as their main computer need to fix.
Yeah.
Like if you're a guy, if you have an awesome gaming machine in your dorm room that you use to do real stuff on, I could totally see taking something like this to class if it had good battery life and maybe a stylus.
I think 6.5 hours is going to last you all your classes in one day.
It depends on what your schedule's like. What about the Surface Pro 2?
Surface Pro 2 also out at the same time. So last year there was a staggered release. That is Haswell. And both the Surface Pro 2 and the Surface 2 are exactly the same close to the same physical dimensions as last year.
So the Pro 2 is a little bit heavier, I think, right?
It's, heavier than the Surface 2,
yes,
but same weight and size as last year's Pro.
Okay.
People had. This is, again, based on what other people have tested, because we don't have one. The battery life was bad at launch, it's about 6 hours also, but a new firmware update has pushed that to about 8 hours.
So more comparable with Ultrabooks using Haswell.
And previous to the Surface 2, I'd been using the Pro, and if you had the power of the Pro inside the weight of the 2, even though this is heavier than like iPad Air, this is totally a good weight.
Yeah,
1.5 pounds.
For a two-handed device, it's not bad. For a one-handed device, it's too much, obviously.
And if this was a real computer, if this had x86, even at less slower performance than a Pro, that would be really, really compelling. So maybe next year.
So that's the Surface 2, the ARM-based version.
It makes a clicking sound.
That's the nicest thing I've heard anybody say about it. We'll see you guys next time.